when you elect a MAGA governor, this is what you get. Jeff Landry signed into law, making Louisiana the first state to mandate the 10 Commandments to be placed in all classrooms in the state of Louisiana. So he is so proud of this. They say that it needs to be in clear, legible fonts. Now, keep in mind, you do have a separation of church and state. You've had these sort of things happen before, but this is exactly what you see. Now, mind you, this is the same folks in Louisiana that refuse funding from the federal government when it comes to meals for students. And so it's amazing how they put the 10 Commandments up, but the question is, are you going to follow the 10 Commandments? Several groups like the American Civil Liberties Union say the law violates separation of church and state in public buildings and would impact students' education and safety. Devon Ombres, the Senior Director of Courts and Legal Policy at the Center for American Progress, joins us right now. Devon, I think about this. Reminds me of when Roy Moore elected this massive monument, this 10 Commandments monument in the courthouse in Alabama, and he was ordered by federal judges to remove it. He lost. What's the difference between that and what Jeff Landry is trying to do here?
There's a lot more different judges on the Supreme Court these days and Justice Alito is not afraid to let his ties to Christian nationalism fly just wide out in the open like his flags.
And so the point there, what you have is by having these 6 conservative Supreme Court justices, what folks like Jeff Landry are banking on, that these individuals who they believe that Christians are being persecuted, they believe in religious liberty, they are making rulings that are allowing religious institutions to be able to do things in the public space that up until the last few years has never been allowed.
Absolutely. The 2022 Kennedy ruling about the football coach who was having prayer services on the 50-yard line changed the game in amending how the Lemon test was used to determine whether the state was, endorsing a religion. But I tell you what, you go back to the case that this is identical to in 1980, Stone versus Graham about it was the state of Kentucky putting up the 10 Commandments in classrooms, and it was a 5-4 decision. And the 4 dissenting justices said that there was a little sentence at the bottom that said this is part of a secular teaching about how the 10 Commandments have been used throughout American history. If you look at the actual bill language here, they put a couple of paragraphs that go up right alongside the 10 Commandments and discuss how the 10 Commandments have been used in public education throughout history. And I bet you dollars to donuts that this Supreme Court is willing to uphold that secular basis as a reason to allow these 10 Commandments to stay up in classrooms. But anybody with 2 functioning brain cells to rub together can tell you 100% that this is the state endorsing religion, violating the wall between church and state. And I watched the legislative debate this morning about this bill. They went through the whole rigmarole saying this is a secular purpose, and then the authors about it went on and on and on about how we need to bring God's law back into the classroom, and this is honoring God's law. And you hear Justice Alito less than 2 weeks ago talking about how we need to bring America back to a state of godliness. Alito's already 1 vote in favor.
This is what we always talk about. Elections have consequences, and those 237 Trump judges he put in place, remember, 100 of those were supposed to come under Obama, but Mitch McConnell blocked them, including those critical Supreme Court positions. Go to my panel. Thoughts on this? Greg Carl, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Mr. Holmes. You really kind of hit at the heart of the question I have for you. Given that the Christian soldier Alito is clearly willing to earmark everything as secular for his kind of fascist Christian purposes. My question is, do you see him and those who are thinking like him now in the court wielding this cudgel of it's a tradition. We saw it in Brewer with the guns. We saw it with abortion. And we certainly see in some of the political and some of the statements that Landry has made, the idea that not only is it secular, but it's an American value being used as an argument to give them some support for doing what they
Absolutely.
probably
And
believe.
do you find it at all intriguing that every time history and tradition and textualism is used by these justices, it seems to be whatever the founders were thinking or whatever the words used at the time that they were written seem to comport exactly with what right-wing people are saying in 2024. Could have happened in 1789, could have happened in 1866 with the Reconstruction Amendments. Whatever they said comports with what Justice Sam Alito and what Justice Clarence Thomas seem to think. And I'll even go you with a 2024 because of what happened in Alexander, where the court basically legalized racial gerrymandering. They're giving the benefit of the doubt to these right-wing state legislatures saying they act in good faith. All they have to do at this point is say, we're acting in good faith. We mean it. We cross our hearts and hope to die. And the justices will say, that's good enough for me.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Reese.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about white Christian nationalist agenda beyond just the religious aspect of things like this, the Ten Commandments? Because I do know that there are a lot of conservative, religious conservatives that are even Black that might look at this on its face and not believe that this is something that's problematic. But my belief is that this empowers a group of people that are very much ideologically opposed to even the idea of Black people and women having humanity and equal citizenship in this country. So can you just talk a little bit about, beyond this particular law, the agenda of groups behind this law?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to have some nightmare fuel, read Project 2025. These are the folks that are driving it, and they're unapologetically white Christian nationalists. We had back when I was on the Hill, we hosted the first hearing on the book bans about how this was driven by a white Christian nationalist agenda that are trying to get our multi-ethnic, our democracy down to the rule of white people again, like it was in 1789 when the Constitution was enacted. This is a rollback of rights of people of color, of immigrants, of LGBTQIA people, of everybody that does not prescribe to this white Christian nationalist theme. And it's a gospel of power. It's not a gospel of compassion. I grew up in a Catholic household and believe that, works lead to salvation. And they believe that power and saying a few words and holding something in your heart leads to salvation. They can do whatever they want. And if you oppose them, you need to be put down. It's scary as hell, quite frankly.
Lauren?
What was the case that you referred to, the 5-4 case that might be the setup to flip the establishment clause, which is pretty clear in the first...
Yeah, it was Stone v. Graham. It was a per curiam case that that overturned the Kentucky rule. I think it was 1980 or 1984. The year is leaving me. But Rehnquist wrote a dissent saying that because they put a sentence saying that the Ten Commandments are the basis of various aspects of American law and the founding, that it passes the smell test, and they needed to hold a whole hearing and debate whether that argument was meritorious. Because in the past they used a bunch of, they basically said, no, this is a violation of the separation of church and state and is a governmental endorsement of Judeo-Christian tradition that you're enforcing upon people. One sentence does not negate that. And it was 5-4, and they wanted to hold a whole hearing and debated on the merits. Now we have a much different makeup of the court, and they have 2 paragraphs expressing how the Ten Commandments were used throughout American public schooling history. But the difference that they cite to is the fact that the Ten Commandments were ensconced in textbooks where they were given a type of, actual substance to it, as opposed to just slapping Ten Commandments. Because there was one Louisiana school teacher who said, well, it said thou shalt not engage in adultery, but we're prohibited by law from talking about any type of sexual activity with anybody under 8th grade. What if a student asks me about what adultery is? Will I get fired for explaining the 10 Commandments to them? Because that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. And the fact of the matter is, it's rage bait from the right. They want lawsuits. They want a big mess. That's how they gain power and gin up their base.
And when you have Leonard Leo sitting here with $1 billion to lead all of this, this is exactly what you get. We appreciate it. Thanks so much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
When COVID happened, poor people were dying at a rate already of 800 people a day. Before COVID, if you went to a funeral every single day, it would take you 600 years to attend all the funerals of the people who will die from the ravages of policy violence, poverty, and low wages in America in just 1 year. It would take you 2 years and 19 days to go to all of the funerals of the people that will die today, and oftentimes silence. Nobody talks about this political genocide, but we are determined today to remember their death and be a resurrection of voting power and voice power like never before.
Economic justice and saving this democracy are deeply connected. We, as a nation, must listen to the demands of the poor, who are pushing and will continue to push political candidates and elected leaders to lift from the bottom so that everybody can rise.
We are the poor, the marginalized, and the underpaid. And we are taking one step forward to say that everybody has a right to live.
Poverty is not the fault of those who are impoverished. It is caused by those who make the policy.
There are over 135 million poor and low-wage, low-income people in this nation.
The biggest block of potential voters by far is low-income, low-wage voters.
I can't afford medicine. Sometimes I have to skip because of the cost.
The farm worker community is tired of the violence imposed upon us by greed, exclusion, and denial of basic human rights.
Those folk that represented by that casket, poor and low-wage workers who are the most moral people in this country because they go to work every day believing, even though going to work is hazardous to their health.
I'm tired of working 70 to 80 hours a week and still not have money for the necessity of bills. I'm tired of getting sick and not being able to go see the doctor, having to make a choice to pay between rent or the light bill or food or clothes.
You cannot claim to care about families and a culture of life and then do everything in your power to rob people of equal access to resources and to force them to live in poverty.
Leadership of both parties have waged war on poor people and low-wage workers.
And this government has treated people experiencing poverty, including their military families, with disdainful, deliberate, malicious neglect.
So the truth is that my son died from poverty.
We refuse to accept poverty as the fourth leading cause of death.
The fourth leading cause of death in this, the richest country in the world.
We march today for our children and the generations to come.
And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
We will voice our demands and register our vote.
When we stand up and when we stand together, things change.
There is the electorate that is, and then there is the electorate that should be.
34 million eligible poor and low-income voters did not vote in 2016. If just 20% of those voters in swing states were mobilized around an agenda, they could change the political outcome of every election. So we're launching the most massive voter mobilization and turnout campaign in history of poor and low-wage voters, allies, and religious leaders.
People are dying, but we know it doesn't have to be this way. And so we are calling on everyone to join us in this Poor People's Campaign, a national call for more revival.
We are here, we will be seen, we will be heard, and our power will be felt. We don't need to be an insurrection. We are a resurrection that will be felt across this country. Are you ready? 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 We are a resurrection, and we are ready.